Listen close. Do you hear that? Feel the ground shake, and your body tremble with emotion. As the air starts to become ever so light, you start to feel something in your gut. That feeling, my friends, is Deftones. In 1988, vocalist Chino Moreno would grab his childhood friends Abe Cunningham, Stephen Carpenter, Dominic Garcia, later Chi Chang, and would come together to create Deftones. Their name takes the slang word def, used in the late 80s, meaning outstanding or cool, and tones, coming from bands of the 1950s. Put the two words together and you get Deftones. A hard-hitting, emotional roller coaster of a band. Or at least that's how I describe them. You see, it's hard to categorize Deftones into a specific genre. A lot of people like to associate them with the nu metal scene, and although that may be true for their early works, their later endeavors are certainly in a class of their own. Chino's angelic yet at the same time almost terrifying vocal harmonies is something in its own. Abe's abstract and hard-hitting drum patterns, which, by the way, I personally think is up there with some of the greatest drummers ever. Stefan's deadly guitar riffs, the late Chi Chang's raw and emotional bass riffs, come together to create something out of this world. If you're a Deftones fan, you definitely know what I'm talking about. I tend to see when a lot of creators talk about Deftones, they never really talk about the raw emotional feeling of what they do as a band and the feelings that kind of come out with listening to their music. So I thought I would talk about that for a second. You can't describe it, but when you hear their music, definitely know it's there. Formed in Sacramento, California, Deftones get their signature sound drawing inspiration from bands such as The Cure, Depeche Mode, Anthrax, Metallica, Bad Brains, and my favorite, Prince. Early days. Camilo Juan Moreno, aka Chino, would live about his life working at Tower Records and would attend McClatchy High School for his education. During his time as a schoolboy, he would meet future bandmates Abe Cunningham, who would play drums, and Stephen Carpenter, who would play guitar, and then later Chi Chang, who would join as their bass player. Before Chi was the bassist, Dominic Garcia would be the bassist, but later would leave, thus leaving Chi to take the mantle. The group would play local shows and would perform alongside bands such as Korn, among others. During one of their early shows, a Maverick Records A&R by the name of Guy Osiri would overhear the band playing for an almost empty crowd, since they were the closing act and it was late. Soon after, Guy would sign Deftones to Maverick Records and they would soon go to work on their first project, Adrenaline. Released on October 3rd, 1995, Adrenaline was Deftones' first album. In the beginning, Adrenaline seemed to have been unsuccessful, but through the word of mouth and extensive touring, the band would achieve an incredible 2,000 copies sold. For a first record, that's literally huge! And it was all because of their persistence and drive to perform. Although the album would become successful, in retrospective, Deftones still had a long way before reaching their specific sound. In an interview, drummer Abe Cunningham says, "At the time we did the first record, which I really like and I think is good, you can tell the band was really young. We've been playing most of those songs for quite a while, and we were just so happy to be making a record that we didn't really think a whole lot about making the songs better." Now, me personally on this album, I definitely do have some favorites on there. A lot of them are really good. Like I said, back to what Abe said on his quote, they didn't really care about the production quality. They kind of just had done it for so long that they just played it and kind of wanted to get it over with, which I could definitely hear in this album. If you're listening to this song in the car, you can tell it is not mixed well. And that's just the honest truth, especially the bass. The bass is pretty choppy, especially in really loud settings. That being said, it is still a great album. Bored is really good. Engine Number 9 is insane. There's a few on there that I can't even just name because there's just so many that are good. But yeah, Adrenaline, solid project for sure. I love it. Still a step in the right direction nonetheless. Deftones were on their way to becoming a household name. Boy, did their next album do that. Around the Fur. Released on October 28th, 1997, this album was a smash hit, featuring My Own Summer, Shove It, and one of my all-time favorites, Be Quiet and Drive, Far Away. And I actually did a cover of this live a few months back at one of my shows. Anyways, this album definitely had time in the oven to bake. Releasing 2 years after Adrenaline, the band wanted to focus on the production side of the music, leaning more into their influences like The Cure and Depeche Mode. The album was praised by fans and journalists alike for its loud yet soft dynamics, the emotional flow of the tracks, and Moreno's ethereal vocals, as ever. Lyrically, topics such as juvenile perception, teenage angst, sex and romance, among others, are mentioned. AllMusic critic Stephen Thomas pretty much sums up the album here. Deftones tap into the same alternative metal vibe as Korn and L7. While they don't have catchy riffs or fully developed sound, Around the Fur suggests they're about to come into their own. Which I agree on, but I'm gonna be honest, I be banging that shit all the time. I definitely, in my opinion, think that there are a lot of catchy riffs. Be Quiet and Drive is definitely one of them. That shit is nice. I love that song. Also, fun fact, there are 2 hidden tracks on their last song, MX. They're called Bong Hit, starting at 1932, and Daemon, that starts at 3236. I really don't know how to pronounce that name. This album is probably up there with my top 5 of Deftones for sure. Be Quiet and Drive is literally like top 3 Deftones songs ever, in my opinion. When that hits, when that drop hits, oh my god, it is like freaking heaven on earth, dude. It is so nice with it. Oh my god, dude. I love it so much. 3 years after Around the Fur, Deftones will release what will become their most successful album to date, White Pony. What fans believe is the definitive Deftones album. And I agree. You could tell the band had finally found their sound. It was fully realized. The band all worked together on this project and each member brought something new to the table. Although at first, it was a little rocky. When recording White Pony, Chino had picked up the guitar and wanted to try some things that he wanted for a change. But Stefan took the wrong way. Chino says, "Initially, I don't think the idea was that I was going to actually play on the record even. Then I remember Stefan specifically saying, dude, if you're going to play it in practice, then you're going to play it on the record." I don't think he was too happy about it, to be honest. But once Stefan had heard Change and the House of Flies, everything had changed. Quote, "I do remember us both smiling at each other when we were sitting, listening to the track being made, fusing of both our guitars. It worked, and the band was on their way to critical acclaim. Instead of writing about himself for White Pony, as he did previously, Chino says, I basically didn't sing about myself on this record. I made up a lot of storylines and some dialogue even. I took myself completely out of it and wrote about other things. Like one of my favorite songs on the record, Knife Party. The track tells a story of a crazed cult-like group whose fascinations involve knives. Quote, I made up this fake scenario of one of the underworld society of knives. People who just get off on these erotic fantasies. And originally, Maverick wanted Knife Party to be the first single, but Moreno battled them as he thought it was a little too weird. Quote, it's a seductive song with a lot of violent imagery. People don't tend to like sex mixed with violence. With no single on the album yet, a white horse had appeared, and boy could this pony run. Change, In the House of Flies, would become the single on the album and would become their most popular song to date. It was featured in movies like Queen of the Damned and Dragon Ball Z Cooler's Revenge, amongst others. It would also secure a number 3 spot in Billboard's Alternative Songs chart and a number 9 spot in the Mainstream Rock Tracks chart. Okay, this, hands down, is my number 1 Deftones album. First off, it also features one of my favorite songs of all time, and my number 1 Deftones song of all time, Digital Bath. Like I want to say. That song is literally, it is literally chef's kiss. I love that song so much. Pretty much everything on that album is straight, like front to back, you can listen to. I love Knife Party. I love Change. I love Digital Bath especially. RX Queen, Elite, Street Carp. Oh my god, the list goes on and on and on. And it's a really good solid album. You can definitely tell that Deftones finally had found their sound, and it changed everything for them. Now there's a lot of things I could talk about that went on during the making of this album, but that would probably be a new video on its own because there's just so much stuff to talk about in that video. But if you guys want me to make a video on specifically the things that went on during the making of White Pony, let me know in the comments. After the success of White Pony, Deftones went to work on Deftones, the album Deftones. It's self-titled. I'm just going to call it self-titled to not confuse anybody. Self-titled would go on to be one of Deftones' more harder albums, and it includes some of the hardest songs they've ever made in their catalog. Quote, we've proven that we can musically go in any direction we want, and we want to get kind of heavy on this one, says bassist Chi Chang. Its 2 singles, Minerva and Hexagram, are definitely up there with some of the rawest and emotionally driven songs they've done, at least so far. Chino would also undergo vocal training for this album too, because during the White Pony tour, he would severely damage his vocal cords. Coming off the heels of White Pony, Self-Titled would go on to enter the Billboard 200 charts at number 2, and it is also one of their highest charting albums to date, which I'll also cover later, and part 2. So this album's kind of weird for me. It was alright. I'm not gonna say that it was great, but it is definitely up there. You know, really honestly, Minerva and Hexagram are really the only two that I really actively listen to on that album. I do listen to Needles and Pins though, that's a good one. Other than that, it's really just those three. Nonetheless, it was not a bad album. Saturday Night Wrist. In the eyes of Maverick Records, self-titled didn't really meet their expectations. So, Deftones went straight into making Saturday Night Wrist. Debatably, one of Deftones' hardest albums to get done. This album was a challenge to make, to say the least. This project for the most part was in production hell. Initially, the band went to enlist Ken Andrews from the band Failure, then Daniel Nakamura, aka Dan the Automator, and would finally land on the producer Bob Ezrin. Or they thought. Band faced a number of personal creative struggles during the recording process, and eventually, Ezrin would leave the project due to creative differences. Additionally, Chino was dealing with personal issues of his own. His marriage with longtime partner Celeste Schroeder had come to an end, and he was battling with heavy drug use. Then the project would go on a hiatus. All this would contribute to the album's dark and introspective themes. Despite these challenges, Deftones would come together again and start fresh. They would finally land on producer Sean Lopez of Far and Revolution Smile. They had scrapped everything they had previously made for the album and would start on a clean slate. Saturday Night Wrist were released on October 31st, 2006, and the reviews were mostly positive. They had done it. Deftones had persevered and overcome their inner demons, and managed to create an album that was both critically acclaimed and beloved by fans. Saturday Night Wrist spawned several successful singles, including Hole in the Earth, which was about the differences the band was having at the time, and how Chino felt the band was ending. Despite facing personal and creative struggles during the making of the album, they were able to create a body of work that has stood the test of time and remains beloved by fans. But what happened next would shock the alternative metal scene forever. On November 4th, 2008, bassist Chi Chang and his sister May were seriously injured in a car accident. The vehicle had flipped 3 times after hitting another car going 60 miles per hour. Chang, who was in the passenger seat, was not wearing a seatbelt and was ejected from the vehicle. But May was wearing a seatbelt and sustained minor injuries. She attended to Chang, holding his head until 2 off-duty paramedics rendered aid. They were able to insert a tube into Chang's throat to help him breathe until the ambulance arrived. Chang would survive the crash, but would go into a deep coma. The band would halt their newest project titled Eros, and go on to work another. How would Deftones recover? They'd be able to make another album? Well, we'll find out in part 2 of Who Is Deftones. Hey guys, it's me. Just want to let you guys know, thank you for all the support. My first video ever. I was kind of scared to do it, but it was very relieving. This video took me a long while to do, and this is only part 1. Imagine how long part 2 is gonna take. Oh my god. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for even watching this. If you made it this far, comment. What should I comment? What should you guys comment? Strawberry milkshakes are the best. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys again. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, as it gives me more of a push to actually start making more videos. Right now it's still a hobby, but yeah, make sure to like and subscribe, share this to all your friends, put that ring bell on, put the notification bell on, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.